Wounded but not broken, with host Patrick Scroggins. As a U.S. Army attack helicopter pilot deployed in Iraq, Patrick faced a devastating crash, which resulted in him dying, losing a leg, and a slew of broken bones. Patrick's story of rehabilitation has helped others to overcome their own obstacles. Each week, Patrick recounts stories of inspiration and interviews guests who have overcome remarkable obstacles. This is Wounded but Not Broken, with your host, Patrick Scroggins.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wounded but Not Broken, another Monday night. Man, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. All my shows to date have, been about inspiration and courage and heroism. And man, what's going on in Ukraine right now, I think that aligns perfectly. I mean, you got some people that are standing up and they're fighting for themselves and they're fighting for everything and they're digging down deep and overcoming a lot. So let's just keep all of them in our prayers and hopefully they come out on the positive side of this in one form or another. That being said, talking about courage and inspiration, we're going to finish up with Joe Hahn. He's online here tonight. Joe.
Hey, Patrick. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, man. So we're going to get on because I know there's a lot to cover. So, we were up to your first deployment when we kind of got sidetracked and then we went back to your childhood. So we're your first deployment. So, on that first deployment, you were, that was your first deployment as a SEAL. And so let's just walk through that and some of the things that you did on that deployment.
Yeah, October 2006. So I had my Trident for about a year and went through the whole workup process with SEAL Team 5. And as a brand new guy, I had the opportunity to deploy with a lot of really good operators. We went to Hahn, which was not too far away from Fallujah, but we flew in, and man, I had this crazy notion, just how I built it up in my head and watching the invasion and stuff on TV, that as soon as I landed, I felt like I was going to start taking incoming fire for some reason. It was entertaining, but we landed in Al-Assad and convoyed over this bridge and went to our FOB in Hahn. Like 7 months. So we had the Christmas deployment, and it was pretty good. Halfway through that deployment, I actually got relocated with a team up north to stand up a FOB up in Rawa, and got to meet some SEAL Team 4 guys. That's when I met a gentleman you guys may have heard of, Mr. Ed Byers. He was on his second platoon about to screen for the command, and he was one of the guys that actually inspired me to screen for it after my second deployment, talking to him and a couple other guys that were on the Team 4 I was stuck up north with. And it was I want to say uneventful, because it is Iraq and it was a decent wartime deployment. So we didn't really get any serious firefights that time, but your basic incoming, and especially when we moved up north, we basically were hanging out in tents with a bunch of Marines, and we started building the HESCO walls and whatnot. It was a good time, I enjoyed being out there with the guys and got to represent my country in the best way.
Yeah, so can you remember, like your first hit on that, or troops, when you got hit the first time, or when your first time firefight, or?
So that first deployment, we didn't actually get in too many actually direct kicks or troops in contact. Most of the stuff we did was pretty uneventful. We didn't exchange a lot of gunfire per se. And like I said, halfway through the deployment, I went up there to help stand up a base with some Marines, and a lot of our stuff was reconnaissance based and collection when we can. But it was, like I said, 2006. It was on that teetering edge where they were starting to get smart and knowing the rules of engagement. They would, take pot shots at us and stuff, and then they'd run inside or something or drop off their AKs. And if we hit the building, they basically would either A, come out with their hands up, or B, just kind of play stupid. We'd arrest them and turn over to the Iraqis for that first deployment. I don't recall too many exciting gunfights on that very first deployment,
Okay.
which happens from time to time.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's especially at that point, it was kind of more strategic and more, I guess friendly, trying to be friendly oriented. We were peacekeepers at that point, just trying to collect the bad guys. But so you did a 7-month deployment on that, and then you exfilled, and then how long before you went again? I know your guys' op tempo is pretty high.
Yep. So we would, like I said, we always had the Christmas deployment. So it was 2006, 2007, about April, May, we came back and did another full workup. And that's when I put my initial package in to go to Green Team for development group. But our second deployment was October 2008 through about April 2009. That one we actually had some pretty good little firefights in, just because where we're at. We were actually in Fallujah, and then we relocated right down the street to Camp Bahariya, they called it. But I remember shutting that Fallujah base down, and we were turning some bases over and some stuff over to the Iraqis about that time, but we were still, I don't know, it's just at that point it was a little more exciting than the first one.
Yeah, and so you said you put your initial packet into Green Team or Dev Group, which a lot of people may not know. Dev Group being SEAL Team 6, correct?
So, like I said, that first deployment is where I met a lot of good guys, and they're like, hey, the only way to become the top of your career path and kind of be with the best operators known to man, this is the command you want to be at. With things kind of slowing down and the shift they had with the regular SEAL teams to, like you said, most of the regular special forces and SEAL teams and stuff started shifting to an advise and assist type deal because they're trying to pull away from the American face behind the war,
Right.
So
that whole direct action thing, we were trying to back up and trying to put it more on them to do their thing.
Yeah, but then there was only basically, besides the Army counterparts, CAG, the development group was the only one that was actually still doing some high profile missions and actually doing what Navy SEALs and team guys were trained and bred to do. That was a big thing. I remember when I was going through training was, hey, the chances of you getting in a firefight are 100%, and if you're not prepared to take the fight to the enemy, then you're in the wrong line of work. Like, we're not sitting here. This is a part of the Navy where you get to sit on a ship and pick your nose for 6 months. So you're going to be on the ground face to face with guys that want to kill you. And so at the time, the development group was the ones that had still had some high profile missions still going on, basic stuff. So Green Team, I went in 2009, which was the selection and training for that command. That was a lengthy 7-month process. It was like, I don't want to compare it to BUDS because it was way more difficult and different than BUDS. Usually BUDS, it's a 6-month process, and it was, if you're a big dumb caveman that could push through mental anguish and pain and know that, hey, I'm going to make it through no matter what, and I'm not going to quit. Basically what BUDS is. But Green Team selection, they wanted intelligent guys working with them, thinking operators that could actually dissect a problem at a higher level compared to anybody in the military community. So not to get into too much about it because the selection and training process is still kind of classified a little bit, but they tested not only your physical acuity but your mental acuity, how to make decisions on the ground, each as an individual. So they were looking for not just guys that would follow orders and just kind of do what they wanted somebody that could actually accomplish a mission, and everybody was a leader at that command. It was it was an honor just to kind of be even thought of as a prospect to make it through there, but making it through the selection training and being selected for the unit I was with was pretty phenomenal. Like, it's, you know, definitely some of the best times that I had in the military and in my life, for sure.
Right. I mean, I would assume it's just like any of the other top tier units or tier 1 units. I mean, you've already proved yourself that you can put up with the amount of pain and the drive. You're not going to quit. So it's more transformed into being a professional and, you know, like you said, intelligence and being able to adapt and make the right decision.
Yep. You hear a lot about the history and the legacy of the command while you're going through selection. Back to Richard Marcinko, his vision of it was, like I said, the counterpart to CAG, so the Army's Tier 1 unit. But he wanted to make it comparable and better. So in the grand scheme of things, people think there's some type of tension between us and the Army, but we work together quite often. But it's the two best shows out there, ready to do stuff, and there's always a sense of competition. But definitely the selection, they want to make sure that, hey, you are the mission's number one asset. You are a tier 1 asset, and they definitely want to make sure that there's not a chance in hell that you'll be someone that can become a liability on the battlefield and overseas, because that unit definitely has a quick turnaround time, and it's one of those things where if anything in the world, even anybody in the world, as far as American citizens go, need your help, that's definitely the unit they usually call us or the Army counterpart. And it was high-paced, high-tempoed, and highly rewarding.
Right, and I know you have done work together. You know, the 2 tier 1 units, and you know there is some kind of conflict because you all operate different. I mean, just different missions, really. I mean, you just have different SOPs, and you know, so sometimes, you know, when you have that many Type A personalities together, it's very hard to be a cohesive unit. So I think for the most part, they try to kind of separate that, right? Or, you know, they tried to integrate it a little bit, but now I think they kind of separate it a little bit, don't they?
It depends. Like I said, I don't want to touch too much into details on either unit, but when I was going through selection in 2009, the focus for our command was Afghanistan, and the Army counterpart was Iraq, and it was searching for top targets in the world. So at the time, obviously, in 2009, we were still hunting bin Laden, and the guys in Iraq, it was like still probably what they caught Saddam in 2004. Yep, it was 2003, 2004. I was going through boot camp when I saw that, and that was the CAG guys, and so that was their deal. And they're just basically going down that list of basically, I don't know if you saw the playing cards that they had for the targets, and they're basically eliminating all the guys or taking off the battlefield those top lieutenants, and then trying to prevent any further insurgencies in Iraq. But they were doing some other stuff that it's tough, because I'd love to talk about it, but at the same time I don't want to.
No, I mean, it's, you know, everybody, I think everybody understands, or you should. I mean, there's certain things that goes on that we don't need to know, and frankly, we shouldn't know. And the only thing we should know is that there are men and women at night you can go to sleep that have your best interest at heart, that are doing the stuff that needs to get done, and that's all we need to know. But
yeah, no, like when they say that America has some of the best military units in the world, it's when I was at the command and talking to other military units from different countries, it was definitely obvious that a lot of different units looked up to each command just because of our reach, pretty much. Like, if you're an American citizen and you were taken by terrorists, no matter where you're at on the globe, you'll have men with green faces coming to either pull you out or return you to your family in one way, shape, or form. Because obviously, sometimes we can't predict the willingness of terrorists or insurgents, but sometimes if we can find you and you're still alive, there's a good chance that they're going to come and bring you home.
Absolutely. All right, man. Hey, that being said, we're going to take our first break here. We'll be back in just a minute. Word from our sponsors, and we'll pick up where we left off.
So put your weapon next to mine. Put your weapon next to mine.
You're listening to Wounded But Not Broken with host Patrick Scroggin. We will be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Come on over.
My father was the best truck driver I've ever known in my life. Like a family tradition.
I'm a truck driver myself. I drove around the state with my cat.
To be the truck driver, you not just only see where you go, you see the world in the larger perspective.
This is a really good time to be in the trucking industry. The dispatchers get good loads for them. The equipment is very new, and then it's very reliable.
At GTS Transportation, we make dreams come true by employing truck drivers, dispatchers, mechanics, and many other occupations. Consider joining our rapidly expanding team where we put quality, human dignity, and respect back into the workforce. Contact us by visiting our website at gtscarrier.com or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667.
Dallas Corporation and Dallas Logistics, a proud supporter of the Veterans Radio broadcast for over 15 years. High-quality printing services and warehouse distribution have been our hallmark since 1985, serving Fortune 100 companies for over 35 years. Check us out at www.dallascorp.com.
Attention, all U.S. veterans. You have served this country with honor and pride. So why is it so difficult to receive the benefits you deserve? Filing a VA claim is complicated, it's cumbersome, and time-consuming. Many veterans have a problem identifying what conditions they should apply for. VDAC, Veterans Disability Application Caddy, is an online application that greatly assists you with filling out your application and identifying the disabilities that you're entitled to. The VDAC process takes about 15 to 30 minutes. From start to finish. The entire process is simple and easy to use. The software automatically cross-references the VA database to determine what presumptive conditions you are entitled to, as well as any secondary conditions. Once done, a fully completed VA form is generated with supporting material. To find out more, go to nifv.org and click on the VDAC button. Again, the website is nifv.org and click on VDAC.
Welcome back to Wounded But Not Broken with host Patrick Scroggin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. So, Joe, we left off with you. So you got through Green Team, and you went to the cadet group, right? So, can we skip on to your first deployment there?
Well, actually, we'll talk about my first injury was prior to my first deployment. So, my first major injury. So, I make it through selection and training and get accepted to one of the most awesome units I've ever been a part of. Like the guys I got to work with it's phenomenal, and definitely it felt unreal. Like it was one of the things I had to pinch myself to be surrounded by the type of guys I was with. But I finished my selection, got to my unit in October 2009, and those guys were just getting off deployment. Their deployment cycle is a little different. I'm not going to go into it too much, but it's definitely more high paced. Those guys at the time back then were deploying once, sometimes twice a year. Can't really talk about how long and whatnot, but it was very high paced. So it was one of those things that hit the ground running with the workup for the next deployment, pretty much. So my second trip with a squadron, still a brand new guy, and it was a jump trip. So we went and did jumping all week. It was actually a really good week. Nice weather where we were jumping at, and made it to Friday. And everybody's excited because we were supposed to kind of get off at noon and kind of go eat some dinner and have a few beers and just kind of bond and check off the first week of skydiving. It's one of those things everybody's all excited. We're like, oh, man, let's get one more jump in. But as the day kind of progressed, the winds were shifting in altitude, and we weren't really tracking that. So we talked about our dive plan, our jump plan. Okay, this is the holding area we're going to get at when we get at. So get here, we'll have our holding area, and we'll start our pattern at this end. So we go up to altitude. It's free fall skydiving. So this is all not static line. This is all operator controlled kind of deal. So we jump out. Usually I'm a bigger guy. I was like 225 at the time, pretty solid, decent sized dude. So I usually would get out before one of the first couple guys because I fall faster. I usually want the lighter guys at the end and the heavier guys in front. Because the last thing you want to do is have a heavy guy fall through a light guy that's still kind of floating down. So we jumped pretty standard size parachutes. So I jump out and making my way to the holding area, and the winds at about 4,000 feet are howling. So they're like pushing me away from the drop zone. At this point in my career, I probably have 10 to 15 actual free fall jumps and 10 static line jumps, because usually going through BUDS and SQT, you get your 10 and you get qualified as a parachutist. And at this point, I was like 15 actual jumps, and I was like panicking because where we were jumping at, the drop zone's pretty clear, it's pretty big, but it's surrounded by trees everywhere. And I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to end up landing in all these trees. So I'm facing towards drop zone, trying to work my parachute, and it's not working. And I see this body of water to my left. So I start working my way towards that body of water because I'm thinking, like, man, I'm going to hopefully just land in some water. That way I'm not smacking into some trees. I'll be wet, but at least I'll be okay. So I start making my way towards that body of water, and the wind's still kind of doing some shifting stuff. And as I'm getting closer to the ground, this little body of water is right next to a road, and I start seeing power lines. And I'm looking at it, and I was like, man, if I'm going to hit that body of water, I'm probably going to hit those power lines because they're right in my final approach to the body of water that I'm going to try to land in. So my heart's racing, my eyes are wide, and I'm just panicking, but I'm trying to stick with my landing pattern. And I'm working my way trying to avoid these power lines, and I kind of don't have a choice but to kind of land where there's some trees are at. So these trees are about 65 feet tall. They're pretty tall. So I start going to this tree, and of course I kind of remember all the skydiving training that we had. They're like, hey, and if you go through some trees, you'll probably get stuck because there's all kinds of lines and stuff going to your parachute. If you get stuck in a tree, try not to move too much or try to get out of your deal, because depending on the size of the tree, if you fall, you'll hurt yourself. But that was not the case for me. When I hit that tree, it ended up collapsing my parachute and basically taking all my lines and twisted them. So instead of getting stuck in the tree, I started falling faster. So I put my feet and knees together like Army Airborne taught me many moons before that, and prepared to impact the ground, which happened to be right next to that road. And when I hit that road, I immediately shattered my left leg. And I hit the ground so hard that it broke my back, and I actually shit myself. And, man, I was like my second trip into the squadron, and I'm sitting here with a shattered leg. I didn't really know how broken it was at the time, but I knew it was broken pretty bad because it hurt like hell, and my back was feeling funny. And I was like, crap. I was super nervous, and I'm looking at it, and it wasn't a compound fracture, so there's no bone sticking out. So I just thought, like, oh, maybe it's just a simple fracture, until I moved it, and it felt like if you put a glass face into a paper bag and you shattered the whole thing, like doing all those pieces. All my bones, you probably know what I'm talking about, but and all the bones above my ankle, actually all of them, my tibia and my fibia, it was shattered. Like there was, when I got to the hospital, they said it was like I said, somebody took a glass face and broke it. But at the time, I didn't know what it was. It didn't feel right. When I moved it, it was just kind of crinkling. And I was like, oh, man, this is bad. The corpsman ran up. Was like, oh, are you okay? And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure I broke my leg. This dude, he grabs my foot and pulls off my shoe to look at my leg. Back wasn't broken at the time. I probably would have decked him because he pulled it off. He didn't cut off the shoe like you do. You should have. He should have either A, left it alone, or B, got his scissors and cut off my shoe. He pulled it like you would pull off your kid's shoe or your boot at the end of the day. Yeah. And my bones, it was just complete trash. And I just started screaming, and I was trying to move, but I couldn't really move very much. And this guy's like, his face got all white, and he's like, this is bad. So they ended up packing me into an airplane that night. That's one of the perks at being at this unit was if guys are hurt, it's immediately getting you back to the Navy doctors. I flew back to Portsmouth that day, and that flight was very uncomfortable because every little bump, like they put a splint on it and everything, but man, just all those pieces of bone shifting around just with altitude and whatnot. I just remember it being the most uncomfortable thing I ever. Had 2 fentanyl lollipops I was sucking on. Just going, man, this is uncontrollably painful. I get to Portsmouth Naval Hospital. They're pulling me out of the back of the ambulance that met us at the terminal on the Oceana side. And this, God bless his heart, this young corpsman, it must have been pretty new to the Portsmouth area, or I don't know, but he went to grab my gurney to get me out of this deal, and he didn't lock it. So as soon as he tries to set me on the ground, the thing collapses, and I just fall off this gurney onto the pavement again. And I'm just like, man, I don't have any glue left today. Like, pavement is my mortal enemy right now. And they roll me into the doctor. They're like, yeah, you've completely shattered both your tibia and your fibia above your ankle. We're going to do our best to put it back together, but you may not walk again, and this may be the end of your career. And, man, that was the lowest I ever felt ever in my life. Like, even when I got hurt in buds, I was, still able to move and whatnot. But this, I was like, man, I just made it through selection, and this unit just accepted me into its ranks. I'm on my second trip of my workup, and I completely destroyed my leg, and my career's pretty much over.
Yeah, that's a shitty feeling. I know the feeling very well. So what did you do from there? I mean, obviously, you and I are built a lot alike. I mean, when somebody tells you can't do something, it's going to be, it's getting annoying.
Yeah, at first I was depressed because I was in a Portsmouth hospital all by myself, and went through all the surgeries. You probably spent longer than I did, but I spent 6 weeks in that hospital laying in that bed. They would do a surgery. They'd have to wait for my leg to stop swelling, and then they'd go and do another surgery. And they ended up putting about 3 or 4 plates in that leg and about 20 screws to kind of piece it together. Luckily, I had a phenomenal doctor. His name was Dr. Anderson. Great doc. For a Navy doc, anyways. It's funny, they have a joke. What do you call a doctor that graduates at the bottom of his class? A Navy doctor. But this guy was great. He put me back together, sent me on my way, and I went back and started rehab. The rehab personnel at this unit, obviously, just like everything else, was top notch. They went and sought out the best. They were civilians, the best rehab, physical therapist, just phenomenal guys. All these guys had background with working with sports teams, like professional sports teams or college teams. These guys were epic.
Yeah, and so I'm assuming you get back there with this. You were probably a little hesitant. You didn't know what was going to happen, but you tried to. Try to jump in with all, with everything you had, with all your heart. I mean, you'd fought your ass to get there, and you're at the pinnacle. You weren't, you weren't ready to go.
Yep. No, I definitely was. It took me, like I said, and when I got out of the hospital is when I got out of my mental funk. As far as, wait a second, I'm still here. I still got orders here. I'm not going to give up until the Navy cuts me orders out of here. So my only mission in life, because they told me it was probably going to be like a year and a half, 2 years to even get recovered enough to just kind of walk around again. But the doc was still like that. That's a really bad injury. Like you've destroyed everything above your ankle and did some really good damage to the ankle joint. But it was like I was like, hey, I still got one leg, and there was a guy there who got shot in the leg. One of the first deployments that the unit had overseas in Afghanistan, a guy named Turbo, and same thing, and he was having issues with that. He ended up cutting his leg off, but that was one of my things. I was like, hey, if I got to cut my leg off, that's fine, as long as I can stay at this unit. So they said a year and a half, but it ended up taking probably 8 months, because I had 8 months until deployment. And so I was like, you know what, I gotta get this healed up enough so I can at least walk. And then I got to work my way, start working with my unit again. And that's what I did. I just kind of pretended like I didn't hear the doc say that I was never going to walk again to I'm going to make those decisions for me when that time comes. And now with the phenomenal physical therapist, and every day that became my new job. I'd go in every day and literally would work on strength, flexibility on all my good limbs. And then when they started saying I could put weight on that thing, it was a grueling process. It was like another mini bud again, but with a broke leg, trying to forcefully get through that.
I mean, and, I think with the attitudes that we have, I mean, that's just the way you approach it. It's just another obstacle you got to overcome. With that being said, we're going to take another commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to, keep going with this story. We'll be right back.
Put your weapon next to mine. Put your weapon next to mine.
You're listening to Wounded But Not Broken with host Patrick Scroggin. We will be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Hey, right on down the line. Come on over.
Attention, looking for semi-drivers nationwide. GTS Transportation of Burr Ridge, Illinois is looking to hire or partner with experienced CDL holders in every state. If you are going to drive, why not drive for the best? Whether you are driving solo, as a team, or as an owner-operator, GTS is looking to add you to their rapidly growing company. Become part of one of the most respected, driver-friendly, and successful transportation companies in America, where drivers are treated as royalty. Contact us at gtscarrier.com. Again, gtscarrier.com. Or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667. We would love to help you, which in turn helps everyone. GTS is an equal opportunity employer.
Dallas Corporation and Dallas Logistics, a proud supporter of the Veterans Radio broadcast for over 15 years. High-quality printing services and warehouse distribution have been our hallmark since 1985, serving Fortune 100 companies for over 35 years. Check us out at www.dallascorp.com.
VDAC, an online application that helps veterans research and file for their VA disabilities, empowering the veteran to take full control of your claim. Find out more by going to our website, nifv.org, and clicking on the VDAC button. Once again, our website is nifv.org, and click on VDAC. VBN, Veterans Broadcast Network, brings you Wounded But Not Broken, hosted by Patrick Scroggin. It lies within you to conquer your greatest challenges. Patrick tackles the stories of how others faced unthinkable odds, and then at a pivotal moment, a change occurred within them that gave them the strength, attitude, and direction to excel beyond the greatest expectations. Listen every week and learn how it is possible to defeat the impossible.
Welcome back to Wounded But Not Broken with host Patrick Scroggins.
All right, everyone, back on here with Joe, talking about him overcoming, his first injury. It was a pretty bad one with his leg being shattered. And so, Joe, let's pick up on that recovery process.
Yeah, like I said, that became my main mission in life. That was the only goal. It was tough, but it was one of those things that if you weren't involved or included in my recovery process and me to get back to my unit, I didn't make time for you, which kind of wrecked a little bit on my family life, but that's was where I was at because the unit I was at, I held all those guys in high respect and high regard, and I wasn't going to let a simple injury prevent me from being a guy on the battlefield helping them out. Like I was. They probably didn't need me in the grand scheme of things, but I had that mentality where if I didn't make it onto that deployment, I failed all those guys that I worked with. And like I said before, failure wasn't an option in my book. So I took that year and a half potential recovery process and shortened it to 8 months because all I had was 8 months before my unit was going to deploy. As soon as I started walking, it took me about 3-4 months after my last surgery just because, 6 weeks for a bone to heal if it's like fractured. But this thing was pretty much mangled, and the doc did a pretty good job piecing it back together, and whatever pieces couldn't really fit together, it kind of molded around the plates and screws that I had to the point where, they're still part of me today. If they took it out, my bone would be Swiss cheese, and it'd be a nightmare. So, I ended up making that deployment, which happened to be a Christmas deployment again. So, October 2009, able to make it with my unit, and we deployed to Afghanistan.
Yeah, and so, to go over that, a strong mind, determination, goals, the mindset, stubbornness, all that factors in when you get hurt like that. And the human body and the human mind are such an amazing tool if you know how to tap into it and how to use it. And obviously you do. And and I feel like in the civilian population that's starting to lack. Especially with this newer generation. I just don't feel like they a lot have that kind of drive to succeed.
Well, it's tough because people don't understand the capability of the human body. Like I've seen, especially overseas, I've seen injuries. You've witnessed it. You're part of it. One of those guys. But injuries you would think should kill a man, and people just kind of like, I wouldn't have been able to done anything after that. And it's kind of that's how the doctors usually diagnose you is on the average person. They're like, hey, the average person after an injury like this will mentally kind of give up and just, hey, I'm broken, and that becomes their new reality instead of going like a very small percentage of people. There's few people out in the civilian world where they have a disability or something that like, you know what, this isn't going to define who I am. This is going to be a part of me and make me a better person. And that's kind of, what I do. Was I in pain every day? Absolutely. Like it was definitely one of those things that I was nervous going back with my unit, but at the same time, I talked to all my head shed. I talked to the rehab guys, and I did all the physical testing again. They're like, hey, it wasn't just like, oh, let's see if you can walk. All right, cool, you're good. And like, this is a tier 1 unit. I had to perform at a tier 1 level. So what was my run time in Green Team? Okay, you have to at least match that and pass the standards for the PT test. All right, cool. Now you need to be able to run around with body armor and stuff all day, doing house runs or mission profiles and stuff. And not fall out or become a liability. So all this stuff my unit and my chiefs and team leaders put me through, and it sucked. It was one of those things, but it tested me again, pretty much. Like I said, I had to go through a mini selection again to make sure that I was good to go to deploy before I went. It wasn't just one of those things where they're like, oh, it's Joe. He just made it through selection. He's good. No, when you get hurt, especially at that command, there's a lot of guys that would be like, that can swallow a lot of pain. But at the end of the day, they want to make sure that you're physically capable. It was excruciating. It definitely sucked, but it was one of those things that's like, I can't let my brothers, can't let my brothers down, and those guys depended on me in some way, shape, or form. So I had to be able to show up and perform at their level.
No, absolutely. That just goes back to that old saying, you're only as strong as your weakest link, and you understanding that, knowing that you were going to have to put yourself through that again to prove yourself, because every guy on your right and left is depending on you, and you don't have time, or you don't have, they don't want to be questioning anything that you're doing. And you don't have, you got to be focused on your task, right? So, yeah, and that's, and you knowing that and being in that unit, it's probably just more of a challenge for you, and just more of a reason for you to overcome it.
Yeah.
But so how did that deployment go with you being hurt?
It really didn't hurt as much in country as it did back home. So before I deployed, getting ready, it hurt like hell. But once, I got the orders and they said it was good to go, I don't know if it's just that constant dump of adrenaline, being in the red. But after getting overseas and just operating night after night, I guess I didn't have time to focus on the pain as much. And looking back, I was like, man, I felt like $100, probably $1,000, but it was a good deployment. It was my actually first really good firefight of exchanging fire up in the mountains of Afghanistan as a new guy at the command. It was phenomenal watching those guys work and being able to work with them. We had some really good missions, and being at that level, it was cool to see everything I envisioned a frogman would be. I was living it, and it was great.
Yeah, and I'm sure it just made it that much more rewardable for you. Given everything that you'd been through,
Yeah.
And all the work that you put in, and the pain and suffering that you put yourself through, and not to mention, like you said, being in that kind of unit, just not even getting hurt, let alone takes a toll on your family life. But then,
yeah, that was speaking of family life. That was during that process was during the time that I was going through my second divorce, being in the Navy. My first one was after going through BUD and whatnot, because kind of like I said before, and you guys probably heard other guys talk about it. It was one of those things where that was my focus in life. If you weren't there to make me a better operator for my brothers, if you were there as a distraction, you would literally get pushed aside and be an afterthought. And it's looking back, it definitely sucked being the spouse of a guy at that level, and especially during that time frame, those years in Iraq and Afghanistan for all guys, the divorce rate was 70-80%. It's one of those things they were telling us in boot camp, don't ever think about getting married. And I was like, I'm already married when I joined boot camp. It didn't last until I made it out of BUD/S, ended up for my first deployment getting a divorce, and then when I was in Virginia Beach at the command at the end of my last deployment was my second divorce, and it's hell. It's hell on a family life for sure. But,
well, it is. It is because the op tempo that you have. Just even in regular military units. With that conflict, the op tempo that you have. Just being in a regular Army unit. You're gone for 12 to 14 months. You come home. You do a workup, and your first formed family becomes the guys you're working next to, and then your family at home becomes your secondary family, and that's very difficult to put up with as a spouse.
it's one of those things that spouse, if you didn't know that you're going to be number 2 or number 3, if you weren't mentally prepared for that, the marriage didn't last. And it was, kind of like you said, you're doing everything with your brothers, for your brothers, and it's tough being gone 12 to 18 months. Like, I felt bad for some of the Army guys. My first at the command, my first year working with them, I was gone 280 days out of the year. Like, I wasn't home. I was either on a workup, deployed, special missions, whatever. And man, by the time I left the Navy, I had so much accumulated leave because in the military, after so many active duty days, you get accumulate, I don't know, like a leave day or half leave day or something. But God, I had so many days for leave because we just wouldn't take it. It was always like, you need to take leave, but you're going to miss part of a workup or training mission. And if you miss a training mission, you're going to be considered falling behind. One of our commanders at the command, there's a CO there, he said, this command's like a burning Ferris wheel. As soon as you step off, you're already going to be far behind.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, and you don't want to be that guy. I mean, because you've already invested so much of yourself into something that you want to be there. And I know that's very hard for people to understand, that it's not that you're putting your family second or putting your significant other second. It's just this is the path you chose to go down, and you feel like you're doing it for the right reasons. You're a patriot, and you want to do the best you can for the country.
And the focus is it just felt different at those levels because it was truly life or death. It wasn't like when we went out on missions. There's 100% chance that you would probably get shot at and or killed. And it was one of the things I couldn't, as a guy at the command and for my brothers, I couldn't lose that focus. And it sucks because the home life and the stateside life kind of suffered for that. And there'd be, like I said, months and sometimes years where I would talk to my foster parents or talk to like my brother and sister, and of course my spouse at the time. I would come home, be home for like a weekend sometimes, and just be like unpacking, repacking, washing clothes. And sometimes I wouldn't even actually go to the house. I'd come to the command, wash some clothes, or just kind of grab. We'd have different bags packed for different either missions or mission training missions, and we'd go in our cage, throw in our dive gear and grab our assault gear and get back on the bus, and we'd be gone again.
Right. And so that selflessness, I mean, I'm so glad you talked about it, because a lot of people can't understand that, and they, for some reason, it's very hard for people to relate to. And people say, I can't believe that you'd turn your back on your family or this and that. But you have to understand, it's not turning your back on anybody. It's you're being selfless, and you're trying to do something that's bigger than yourself. You know what I mean? I mean, you're a part of something that you truly believe in, and you're fighting for the country. And so people just don't understand that. And I hope stories like yours get told more often, and maybe they can. But it's a very difficult thing, and I know even after that, I mean, your life hasn't gotten really any easier. I mean, you've been through a lot. Because so at what point did you get remarried to Morgan?
So that happened right before I got out of the Navy. Now you're gonna put me on the spot. We got married 2016. And I retired officially from the Navy 2017. So but we started kind of seeing each other after my separation and divorce from my last spouse. And she got lucky. She was there for my last couple of deployments, but they were kind of short. And then transitioning out, I spent a lot of time home because I ended up getting hurt again and some more surgeries. But we will talk about that because it was after my second deployment with the unit I was at that I got hurt again. So my first deployment, we ended up doing some stuff up north in Afghanistan in Kaust area. That's right before we got there. The guys before us actually got in this real bad firefight with some guys on this fob, and it was one of those fobs that was a special missions fob, so we weren't with a big built-up base. It was out in the middle of nowhere, and it was really close to some guys in Salerno, where a bunch of Ranger guys were, a whole Ranger battalion. But we were between us and them was just flat nothingness. Like Afghanistan has some gnarly mountains, but where we were at, it was just flat. It reminded me of being on the moon or in the Sahara Desert. You could see mountains in the distance, but man, you could see for miles and miles. But the insurgents there were crafty as hell, and obviously where we were at, they were blending in with the local populace, so it was easy for them to sneak up on people and take pop shots and launch mortars and whatnot. But I bounced around from there, did some stuff in Wardak area, and it was fast and furious. Like I probably did more missions in that short amount of time because the deployments were a little shorter than they were at Team 5. But I did more missions on that shorter deployment than I did at Team 5, probably combined, just because it's just you are that premier unit, and it costs so much money to train and deploy you. They were going to use you, and yeah, we were definitely hunting and doing missions daily.
Right. And so, talk about the second time you got hurt. Walk us through that one.
So I got back stateside for my first deployment with the unit, 2010. After that, quick turnaround, went and deployed again, and then we got back from my second deployment with that unit in August 2012. It was great. I was actually about to take a leadership position. I was super stoked, and we are on another skydiving trip. At this point, this is like my fifth or sixth skydiving trip. The unit I was at, that was something they really loved to do, and they would make extra time in the training schedule to go skydiving, which was great. It's just that I was one of those guys. After my first time, I was always super nervous, and I was like, man, you know what? I'm never gonna do another. Let's do one more type of jump ever, because that's gonna happen. Last time, my first injury was Friday, the last jump of the day after the last jump that we thought we were going to have the time before, and I was having such a good time. I was like, let's get one more in, So, same thing. It was Friday, and we were doing some high altitude jumping. So we were up in an area in Colorado doing some high altitude jumping. So basically, it's different when you're jumping at altitude compared to jumping, say, in the desert or sea level. As you get higher, the air gets thinner, and the way that affects your parachute is you basically fly faster with your parachute. So I jump all week, which is a pretty high tempo skydiving trip, because we actually, that trip earlier that week, a buddy of mine actually broke his leg catching it with a bad landing, because his parachute kind of collapsed on him. And then our CEO at the time came in hot. So basically he's screaming across the ground, and when he went to flare, he couldn't keep up running, and he ended up sliding in on his butt and broke his tailbone. But I was having a good jump week, and same thing, it was Friday, about lunchtime, and like, let's get one more in. Let's go in, we're doing an accuracy jump. So we're trying to land on this it's a piece of cloth that we put shaped like a T, and this piece of cloth was probably not as big as your standard house driveway, about 10, 15, 20 feet long, and 6 to 8 feet wide. And we're practicing like accuracy jumps, because some of the jumps we do would be on small mountaintops or plateaus. So if you would miss your spot in a real life mission, you go off the side of the mountain or something. So we're practicing high accuracy jumps. It was the last jump of the day, and I'm trying to do some maneuvers to line myself up and land on this piece of cloth, and I wasn't really paying attention to my altitude. So I'm doing this slow flat turn, and I look at my altimeter. I'm trying to face final and land. I look at my altimeter, and I'm below 100 feet. And I'm staring at all these, we call them ISUs. So they're, I know ISU stands for it's a portable storage unit pretty much, but it's basically, we use those instead of pallets when we packed our gear. And they're just basically little Connex boxes, mini Connex boxes. We call them ISU 90s because they're about 90 cubic feet. We had about 7 or 8 of them lined up on the edge of the drop zone, and we had the ambulance. And so I'm facing this ambulance, and all I could see is myself going through the front windshield of this ambulance. I start kind of getting nervous and panicking, and I start shifting and what they call crabbing. So basically I'm moving in my harness to relocate myself in the air facing a different direction. And I'm looking towards these ISUs. So ever since my first injury, I always wore a GoPro on my helmet, just in case, A, I got hurt again, I can kind of see what happened, but B, it just became standard practice for review and jumps and stuff. So I'm looking at these portable storage units that we had, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go between them. That way I don't hit them. And so I'm getting closer and closer to the ground. I'm full flare, so I'm sprinting as fast as I can because I'm trying to slow down my parachute and slow down my leg movements, but I'm still moving pretty quick. Like I said, at high altitude jumps, the air thinner, so you're cruising across the ground. So I'm already full flare, and I'm going between them, but then I'm looking at this ISU to my left, telling myself in my head, I got to avoid that thing. I don't want to hit it. But in the camera, you can see my hands dip down that direction, which steers my parachute directly towards that ISU. So at the very last second, I realized I'm about to hit this thing. And I thought about maybe I should just ball up and just hit it kind of as flat as I can. But I was moving too fast. I was like, there's no way. This is going to hurt way worse. I may end up killing myself. So I ended up throwing my legs up. So I put my legs in front of me to kind of brace for impact. And I hit so hard, my left leg bounced off because luckily, with all the lovely plates and screws the Navy installed in me, my left leg kind of bounced off. But my right leg immediately gave way, and my foot broke off. You can see in the footage, my foot into my shoe, so my shoe kind of touches the side of my foot, and then the bone, my tibia and fibula from my ankle joint, shove out from my leg and hits this ISU and just shatters. I hit this thing so hard, the ISU pretty much it rocks it. And so I hit there, and I'm looking straight at my leg when it happened, so I knew exactly what happened, and I was completely conscious the whole time. I didn't lose consciousness on this one like I did last time. And the first thought in my head was not that I was hurt, that I was pissed off at myself because I had broken my leg again. And I just everything in a matter of milliseconds, the whole process went through my head, and I was so angry and pissed at myself, and all I could think about is how guys would think that this is going to be my legacy in the unit, was the guy who would shatter his legs when he went skydiving.
Both times.
Both times. Well, at that time I had at least 300 jumps. I've already been many skydiving trips before that, and I kind of gotten over everything. So the guys run up to me. The first guy runs up to me, and his eyes were super wide because they said that I hit that thing so hard they thought I died because the way my body kind of crumbled and how hard I hit it, because I hit it with everything I had. As soon as my legs hit, my bottom hit, my back hit, my head hit upside down, and I just kind of crumpled. And as soon as I hit, I just laid there. I didn't move because I knew what happened. I was so angry at myself. And actually, that anger kind of overcame the pain. And I didn't start feeling pain until the guys started running around for me. And the first guy runs up to me. His eyes are super white. He goes, Joe, are you alive? And I was like, yeah, but I broke my leg. And he looks at my leg, and he looks at me, and he goes, oh, it's not that bad. And I was like, you don't have to lie to me, man. I saw it. It is bad. my foot's just hanging off there of my leg, and there's just my bones in kind of pieces. But the corpsman ran up to me, and this guy was a rock star corpsman. He looked at me and he goes, "Hey, dude, I can't get a pulse in your foot, so I'm going to have to atomically align your foot. That way I can get a pulse, because if you don't, you're going to lose your foot." I was like, "Do what you got to do, man." And so, sure enough, grabbed my foot in my shoe, pulled it and adjusted it, and let the kind of suck back into the skin and tissue to get it atomically correct and aligned. And man, that took my anger and made me swallow that anger, because the amount of overwhelming pain was unbearable. Because at this point, it was like one of those things where he was giving me a once over, and there wasn't any fentanyl lollipops. There's nothing. It was just like, we got to do this because you have no pulse. And this could be dangerous. You could lose your foot. And I kept thinking about that scene, looking back of Dances with Wolves. My corpsman tell me, "You're not going to lose this foot." So I'm laying there in more pain than I've ever been in probably in my life. And then once he adjusted my foot, put me in a splint, they called the ambulance. The ambulance had some issues sticking me because I have really thick skin. And so they were trying to give me morphine on the spot while loading me up. And the EMT chick there was just like, she kept over-penetrating, blowing out my veins pretty much. And my corpsman goes, "You know what? Here you go. I got 2 fentanyl lollipops." I went to the closest hospital. Saw a doc there who put on an external fixator, and they loaded me up in a plane, and I flew back to Portsmouth. And I landed at Portsmouth, and it's funny, I got the same exact room I had a couple of years prior, and the same exact nurses that were in there, and they looked at me kind of funny because I came in with a broken leg. Within a couple hours, the same doc that fixed my left leg walks into me and he goes, "You don't have to stop meeting like this because you're out of legs now. You can't break anymore." But God, that sucked again, because same thing. He's like, "Man, I don't know. I told you that the first time, but this injury's way worse. Same thing. We're gonna fix it, but especially with both of them now, you're not looking too good as far as returning to active duty." So, again, 6 to 8 weeks I spent. They would have a surgery, install a plate and some screws, wait till my legs swelling to go down. And they did that once again. I had 3 plates and another 18, 20 screws in my right leg. And man, it was more instant drive than it was the last time. Like I wasn't depressed at all. It was one of those things where I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna let this slow me down. The last one didn't, so this one won't either. So same thing. I went to rehab every day, and that was my mission for the next 8 to 9 months. And the same thing, I was trying to make the next deployment. Unfortunately, at this time, I wasn't able to get cleared in time to actually deploy overseas. And so I actually had to do an L&O job for that deployment, which I was pretty bummed about, but it did give me some extra time to heal up. And that was frustrating to see the guys deploy. They deploy without me, but they went overseas, and I went to D.C. and basically sat around and discussed stuff from the command with Secretary of Defense and stuff like that. That was a great experience, but at the same time it was disheartening because I was built to deploy, built to be with my brothers, built to be with those guys.
Right. Yeah, it had to be a pretty shitty time for you. I mean, even though you were still doing an important job, but you weren't doing where your heart was.
Yeah.
So, did you return back and ever deploy again, or did you start the process of retiring?
Nope, I actually did. I was like, you know what, I'm getting through this, and I'm getting back to my unit, and I'm going to deploy again. So at that time, definitely did the workup, got cleared again. I actually started wearing this device called an IDEO brace. So down at AMC down there in San Antonio, Center for the Intrepid, they had this awesome doc that had this brace that basically would have these two rods that ran behind your leg and attached to a foot plate because my ankle was still kind of giving me issues. So basically this brace acted like a external prosthetic that would flex with these bars when you push your knee on it. So to push off, I wouldn't have to use my ankle because I was definitely had limited range of motion after that, lots of scar tissue, especially since my ankle joint decided to leave some actual cartilage behind on that ISU. I didn't have the range of motion. I used to tell guys, I guess my life as a dancer is over. I might as well look for a different line of work. But luckily, I'm not a dancer. I'm a team guy, so I'm going to be able to make it through this. So, no, I actually deployed to Afghanistan one more time, and then I deployed to Yemen. And then that was a crazy deployment because that was about the time the embassy got taken over and they had to shut down the country. It was 2015. And then that whole deployment, something just didn't feel right. Like I was in a lot of uncomfortable pain for no reason. And I just kept attributing it to me being a pussy, so I would push through it. You know, I had a rock star of a corpsman that was attached to us from Team 5, my previous command, was augmenting us. And man, he would be rubbing my ankle and just doing movement and physical therapy nightly. Like I would harass that guy. We had a love-hate relationship going because it hurt like hell when he moved it, but it was the only thing that would keep me functioning. Because if not, I'd stiffen up and I would almost be useless. But I got back and I was like, man, my foot's really, my legs bothered me. So I was talking to, some other doctors and the rehab guys, and like, hey, they got this new procedure where they can go in and basically clean out your joint, because it was basically my joint space. All the bones and stuff were just kind of locked in with those plates and screws.
Right.
So they're like, hey, we can do this surgery, and it should make you feel better. So basically they go into your joint space and kind of, instead of, because I didn't have any cartilage left in my ankles, they basically create like the scar tissue that acts like cartilage. I was like, all right, cool. And he's like, this procedure is probably like an hour, if that. The recovery time's, less than 6 weeks. Like you'll be on crutches until you can kind of start putting weight on it again. I was like, all right, cool. This is great. I can do about 4 to 6 weeks. It's kind of it's not like 8 to 9 months. So they take me into the hospital. I go under, and I'm coming up in the recovery room. And I'm standing there, and I look at the clock, and I'd been in surgery for like 6 to 8 hours, and I have a brand new scar. This was supposed to be a small invasive surgery, so basically like a micro deal, and they go with little instruments and basically micro, like scrape the inside of your cartilage, create scar tissue. But I had a no shit 8 to 9 inch open incision. The doc comes in and he goes, you're not gonna believe this, but some of your hardware had worked inside your ankle joint, and you were running around with screws loose in your ankle joint for the past 6 months. I was like, oh, really? If you don't know anything about the human anatomy, joint spaces are very, very closed off, and the fluid inside of them is very smooth. Just the smallest bit of any type of debris in joint spaces is excruciating because it's not designed for anything being there besides that fluid. There was a solid metal screw that one of my 18 screws in that leg had worked its way off the plate and was floating around in my ankle joint. Every time I ran, I had this sharp screw just digging into my ankle joint. And I was like, oh, well, that sucks. And he goes, yeah, so your recovery time is going to be about 3 months instead of 6 weeks. Motherfucker. But, no, I recovered from that, and stuff started kind of shifting again. And I went and saw some of the other Navy docs and all the other docs, and they told me, like, hey, this is what's going to happen. Like we can't tell you that you're not going to be able to operate again because you've proven us wrong multiple times already. But if you continue on this path, it's going to continue shifting your hardware because the amount of stress you put on your legs when you're moving around on deployments. I'm running around I'm a breacher, so instead of the standard, 50, 60 pounds of body armor and ammo, I had breaching charges, sledges, hoolies, like my helo weight. So when you go on a helicopter, you get weighed because they only so much payload. So my helicopter weight was close to 325, 330.
Right.
Because of the amount of weight that I carried, including my body size. And just run around the mountains with that in Afghanistan and doing stuff like that in Yemen, it was causing all my hardware to shift because it's a whole lot of stress you put on the body. And so they're like, hey, if you continue down this path, every deployment you're going to have some type of surgery to readjust hardware and whatnot, and you probably won't be walking when you're 40. At this time, I'd already been in the Navy about 13, 14 years, and it was tough because they told me that I would basically be at a desk job for the rest of my career, which, to get to 20 is another 6, and I wouldn't be able to advance because my rate to have a deployable leadership position. And the Navy, at that time after that last surgery and my last deployment, the command and the Navy were going to make me non-deployable, which was, was out of my control at that point. I was completely disheartened.
It's like a kick in the nuts, though. I mean, because you're not ready. And it just
we're supposed to be ready. I had no plans to even think about what I was going to do after the military, and the med board process wasn't super long, but it was long enough that it was quick enough that when I started getting out and out crossing, I had no idea what I was going to do. It's one of those things that was mentally defeated hearing that and going through that med board process, because I didn't know what I wanted to do or what I could do. Like I had my dream job. I was living any boy's fantasy. I mean, the top of my career, as high as I could go as a Navy SEAL, and just the guys I was with. Like, I probably could have been a janitor, but I think mostly it's just the guys I was with. I didn't want to be anywhere else. I didn't want to be surrounded by anybody else in the world because everybody had the same mentality. Everybody had that drive, and there was nobody that would. No one's crying because it's Wednesday or Thursday and they wish the weekend was there, kind of deal. Like everybody had the same mentality. Like the weekend gives us 48 hours more to train. So let's meet here. Let's do this. Let's do that. And that's what drove us. And all that was coming to an end. I was like, man, I'm never going to see these guys again. It was the biggest kick in the nuts was the fact I wouldn't see those guys. It wasn't the fact that I wasn't involved to be able to do my job. The biggest thing was not being able to be with those guys and be on the point with those guys.
Yeah, I mean it's disheartening as hell. I mean, the guys that rely on you for everything, and you rely on them. I mean, they're brothers. I mean, it's just that's the hardest thing for a military guy to do, is lead the military, because it's just not that you don't get that on the civilian side of things. It just doesn't happen.
Definitely just the experiences alone. Like there's nothing I could do with anybody in the world that would be resemblance close to the experiences I had with those guys. And
and I know even after you got out, it's still I know we kind of touched on you getting remarried and everything a little bit. I know we're kind of running out of time, but you've been through hell, really. I mean, even since you've gotten out. I mean, your family and everything.
I got out in 2017 was my official retirement date. I got medically retired 100%. And then 2 years later, at the beginning of January 2019, my wife was having some issues with her stomach. She kept saying, I can't eat, can't go to the bathroom, something's going on, and she was just always kind of uncomfortable and in pain. Went to a couple docs, and they were explaining like, oh, you're probably just constipated, it's your diet, and she was healthy and she's healthy and fit, so it's kind of one of those things like, oh, she eats well, she doesn't just eat junk food all the time, she has a good variety. So man, they would pile her with all kinds of laxative stuff, thinking that she's just something stuck in there. And I was like, my first thought as a guy, I was like, maybe there's something going on with her colon or prostate. And I was like, but chicks don't have prostates, they're chicks. But I was like, hey, maybe we should try a colonoscopy to get something checked out because something's not right. So we ended up finding out that she had stage 3 colorectal cancer. She had a tumor about 7 inches in diameter, blocking everything in her colon. That was tough to hear because we have 3 little boys, and it kind of brought me back to my childhood, remembering my mom. Right, my sons are about the same age I was. Me and my brother and my sister were, and I remember all the stuff that my mom went through, and seeing her going through all that stuff. It was tough. I remember in the military, they always, you always had the most likely course of action, most dangerous course of action, least dangerous course of action kind of deal. So that was my process. Like, I worked through what the worst thing that could happen is she could not survive, and I would be stuck in the same situation my father was in when I grew up. And that hit me hard. Like, it was definitely something. It was tough to chew on because I couldn't imagine my boys going through what I did and growing up without a mom. So that's 2019, 2020, and she was going through all her chemo and radiation treatments. It was tough watching her go through that because it wreaks havoc on the body. And she went through surgeries to kind of get the tumor removed, and had to go through some stuff where they kind of had her rerouted her intestines so they healed, and she had to wear a colostomy bag for a little bit, and it was hell on her mentally and physically. And we were lucky that she got through it, but the whole strong mental fortitude was, I'm glad that she had that too. A lot of people, some people would kind of give up in that situation, but she definitely still is just one of those people that brighter type things, always the best side of things. Hey, we're going to fight through this kind of deal.
Yeah, no, I mean, she's a beast. I mean, she's had a great attitude, and she powered through it, and everything's good now. Good bill of health, right?
Yeah. After the surgery, they removed that whole section of her colon and whatnot, put her back together, and now she's pushing on. I mean, she definitely had to change up her diet a little bit. Believe it or not, there's a reason why you have all the feet of intestines you have in your body to process all that food. And if you don't, then it definitely your body has to relearn how to digest and do things properly. But besides whatever she kind of goes through, she's feeling great. We haven't had any issues so far. Every checkup's been pretty good. So it's pretty good. But obviously we're gonna keep on checking every 6 months to a year. Make sure nothing comes back. But no, it's definitely fortunate. I'm glad that we made it through that. That was definitely stressful, not for her, definitely for her, because she was not sure how that was going to pan out. But for me as well, like I said, all I could think about was my childhood. I relived my whole childhood that year, seeing and sympathize with my dad so much about what he went through with my mom before she passed.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think cancer is something that so many people can relate with. I know that my mother died of cancer when I was young as well, and it's a tough thing to watch somebody go through and for them to overcome it and just to see the attitude. Because my mother, she didn't have like a super strong attitude about it. She was almost just defeated as soon as she got the word, and it was so tough to see. But it's awesome to see people nowadays that they hit it head on and they fight it and a lot of times are overcoming it now. But it's very tough to witness someone close that you love going through that.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you what, Joe, I don't know that we did much justice of telling your story. I hope that everybody listens to this over and over again. You have an amazing story, and I know there's so much more to tell. I mean, unfortunately, we're kind of running out of time for tonight. I wish we could go on forever. But man, I can't appreciate you so much for getting on here and talking about the things you talked about. And I just got one question for you. If you had it to do all over again, what would you change?
Man, where I'm sitting at today, I'd be afraid to change anything just because I wouldn't want to alter the course that I have right now. I mean, I got a great wife. I got 4 beautiful sons, my 3 with my current wife and my oldest with my ex. And they're both wonderful. My ex is a great gal, and my oldest, he's about turned 15, got his first girlfriend, and he's crushing it. Like being a father and being where I'm at today, if I had to change something, like I think about it, it's like, man, if I would have not did those 2 jumps, my injury and my recovery process is kind of what brought me to my current life, and there's no telling where I'll be at today, and my life would be completely different. So I guess the biggest thing would be not to be such a pussy right at the beginning after I got hurt.
So what's in the future for you, man?
Well, right now I work with a pretty good company and do training and some contracts with the military. I'm getting certified to be a dive instructor for a nonprofit, Warfighter Scuba. Man, I hope to one day just do that 100% of the time, because being in the water is like the least painful thing I can do. Like I don't go, unfortunately, I can't go on runs anymore. So I do a lot of bicycling, and my workouts consist of me not stiffening up, because here I am, 40, and I'm still walking. So those doctors were wrong again. But I hope to continue being mobile well into my 70s. So trying to live a least stressful life and spend as much time with my boys as I can. Yeah.
Hey, we'll go on hikes when we're 70 together.
There you go. Hell yeah.
Anyways, man, I really appreciate you coming on and telling your story, and man, it's so inspiring, and again, I know there's so much more to it, and we really didn't do it justice, but I hope we got the message across to a lot of the listeners of, what you can accomplish if you believe in something, you believe in yourself, and you can learn how to tap into that human mind and body connection. And everybody, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening. This story means so much to me. Joe's such a great friend of mine, and he's a great guy. He's got a great family. And, I hope this kind of paints a picture of our war fighters and what they go through and how much they're willing to give, and how we really need to appreciate them every day, because if it weren't for men like Joe, then, where would our country be? But again, thanks for tuning in tonight, and we'll talk to everybody next week on another episode, and we really appreciate you tuning in. And let's just keep a prayer in our heads for the people of Ukraine. They're standing up and they're fighting a big fight. All odds are against them, and they're doing it. So thanks for listening, Joe. Again, thanks, brother, for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for letting me tie up a whole month worth of episodes with you guys. It was awesome.
Yeah, man. Thanks. Appreciate it. Everybody have a good night.
You're listening to Wounded But Not Broken with host Patrick Scroggins.
My father was the best truck driver I've ever known in my life. Like a family tradition.
I'm a truck driver myself. I drove around the state with my cat.
To be the truck driver, you not just only see where you go, you see the world in the larger perspective.
This is a really good time to be in the trucking industry. The dispatchers get good loads for them. The equipment is very new, and then it's very reliable.
At GTS Transportation, we make dreams come true by employing truck drivers, dispatchers, mechanics, and many other occupations. Consider joining our rapidly expanding team where we put quality, human dignity, and respect back into the workforce. Contact us by visiting our website at gtscarrier.com or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667.
Dallas Corporation and Dallas Logistics, a proud supporter of the Veterans Radio broadcast for over 15 years. High-quality printing services and warehouse distribution have been our hallmark since 1985, serving Fortune 100 companies for over 35 years. Check us out at www.dallascorp.com.
Attention, all U.S. veterans. You have served this country with honor and pride. So why is it so difficult to receive the benefits you deserve? Filing a VA claim is complicated. It's cumbersome and time-consuming. Many veterans have a problem identifying what conditions they should apply for. VDAC, Veterans Disability Application Caddy, is an online application that greatly assists you with filling out your application and identifying the disabilities that you're entitled to. The VDAC process takes about 15 to 30 minutes from start to finish. The entire process is simple and easy to use. The software automatically cross-references the VA database to determine what presumptive conditions you are entitled to, as well as any secondary conditions. Once done, a fully completed VA form is generated with supporting material. To find out more, go to nifv.org and click on the VDAC button. Again, the website is nifv.org and click on VDAC. VBN, Veterans Broadcast Network, brings you Wounded But Not Broken, hosted by Patrick Scroggin. It lies within you to conquer your greatest challenges. Patrick tackles the stories of how others faced unthinkable odds, and then at a pivotal moment, a change occurred within them that gave them the strength, attitude, and direction to excel beyond the greatest expectations. Listen every week and learn how it is possible to defeat the impossible.